Hi there, my name is Brian, and welcome to the Wool to Gold podcast, vlogcast. I don't really know what we're going to call this. I think this is just, I don't know, some of you have requested some content that I feel requires a little bit more of like a long form presentation. I don't know, some of you want more of me for some reason. So I'm not really sure exactly what this is going to be yet. What I do know is at some point I might start doing some interviews with some, I don't know, there's some well-known people in spinning that I would love the opportunity to interview, and if I had a podcast, then that would be like the perfect excuse. I think though mostly what I'll be doing is chatting with you guys about future project plans, fibery things, I don't know, fiber drama, if that's what you want. Maybe doing some more in-depth videos, and I think I plan on uploading a lot of my TikTok content here so I can organize it for you guys. I have a lot of bite-sized videos that make it really easy to sort of get through those beginner steps of spinning. I don't have enough followers on TikTok yet to make playlists, so this is a skein of yarn I just finished drying. It is the Great Pumpkin Charlie Brown. It is an art bat that I blended together with bamboo, wool, a ton of other just random ingredients, some glow-in-the-dark fiber. That's what those white bits are. And then the brown is CVM Rommeldale, which is one of my favorite breeds. It is a livestock conservancy breed. And I have about 80 yards. Super pumped to have this finished. This is going to be in the Halloween drop. If you are not aware, I do have a shop. I'll link it below. I mostly just sell excess handspun skeins because I use most of my handspun. I think a lot of hand spinners are that way. We're pretty selfish with our handspun. It takes a while. It's a time investment. Especially if you're like me and you normally prep a lot of your fiber yourself. If you're curious, I am just spinning up some Ashford Corriedale fiber from someone's D-stash. I hunt a lot of D-stashes. One of the most common questions that I get on TikTok is like, where the heck do you get your fiber? A lot of the times I buy it secondhand from people who are trying to like lighten up their D-stash and stuff because you can just get good prices. And I do not have endless money to spend on this hobby. It is not my full-time gig. Maybe one day that would be super cool, but as of right now, I do this part-time. So a lot of the times I'm just getting like budgeted or discount fiber. It just helps me get more bang for my buck. So the main reason I wanted to start a sort of like long form YouTube podcast is because I feel like the most common question I get, full stop, on TikTok, on my lives, just as a comment, is how I started spinning, like how I got into this. And it's a long story. Pull out your craft, whatever you do, whether it's crochet, whether you knit, needle felt, wet felt, whether you spin, pull out some materials, settle in, get yourself a fresh cup of coffee. Let's talk about my spinning journey because it took a while to get here. It was not a smooth road necessarily. Let's start with where my fiber journey actually started. I have been a crocheter and a knitter for, I don't know, I'd say, I guess 6 years now, but very much on and off. I never really got hooked on knitting. I did get hooked on crochet, but it wasn't until I'd say these past 3 years that I got back into crochet. I was introduced to it in college because one of my roommate's moms is like a big name in knitting design. I won't name drop, but she used to bring us to the Vogue knitting event in New York City. And when I was much younger and like a much more reckless youth, I was not a rule follower in my youth. I wasn't a bad kid, but I wasn't a good kid either. And so I used to skip and go to New York Fashion Week in like high school and stuff. So I was like, oh, cool, like Vogue knitting. I would love to see that. It was super interesting, wonderful experience. I still never got though the knitting bug, but I definitely was interested in fiber arts, and I was interested in definitely like buying the finished product of fiber arts. There's just a lot of like cool things that you can make out of wool. Fast forward to, I'd say about 2 years ago, I had a lot of like sudden losses in my family. And honestly, I've been pretty lucky to not have a ton of losses in my family, but I think a lot of people are like they lean on fiber arts and art in general when they are having a difficult time. And I've never really considered myself a very artistic person. I didn't go to school for art. I went to school for environmental science with a concentration in sustainable agriculture and business. So my intention was never really to make art. I didn't think I was good at art or was a very, again, what I just didn't think I was creative. And then I think I was at Maryland Sheep and Wool and I saw someone spinning. I didn't know you could do that. And I saw someone doing it. Now it was really relaxing. So that was super neat. I was like, that looks pretty zen. Color me intrigued. I believe it was that very same Maryland Sheep and Wool that I was shopping around in the farm yarns and things like that, and I was noticing that there were people who were selling like whole fleeces, and I was being nosy in them, and one of the farmers was like, have you seen the fleece tent? Like, do you know about the fleece tent? And I was like, I had kind of like heard about it. It was on the itinerary. I think I really understood the fleece tent. And so I'd never gone in before. It was always kind of a really intimidating space for me before I was actually a spinner. And the second I stepped foot in there, that was it. It was over for me. I had always said I was not going to be a spinner. And in fact, I said that until about, I'd say 3 or 4 weeks after I had purchased not my first fleece, not my first 2 fleeces. No, my friend. My first 3 fleeces. I brought home 3 fleeces from the following year's Maryland Sheep and Wool, and I was like, I'm not gonna be a spinner. Now, I consider this part of the story because, like, I was enchanted by spinning, but I knew from other people in the fiber community that it was a bit of a, more than a bit, it was a huge time and, like, money investment. Now that I'm like more of an experienced spinner, I know that you can get secondhand equipment. You can try equipment out for free if you are part of weaving or spinning guilds, and you can get equipment at auctions. So the auctions that they have at big fiber festivals like Rhinebeck and Maryland Sheep and Wool, all of these things, right? To make it more affordable and accessible. And at the end of the day, it only takes one day to learn to spin, to make string. You know what I mean? It'll take the rest of your life to master it, but it only takes one day to learn it. And so I was just really insistent that I wasn't going to do it because it was too much money and it was too much of a time investment. But then I also found myself like weirdly stashing away money for just something. That something was a spinning wheel. And so once I had my hands on 3 fleeces and I had successfully made a really beautiful felted rug out of one of them, I'll insert a picture of it here. I made this, I had a lot of fleece left over, and I finally decided to cave and buy an electric eel wheel 6. Now, this was in like very, very, very late May, and then I think by Tour de Fleece, I was already spinning almost every day. So that's in July. For those of you who don't know, in the month of July, spinners, what we do is we spin like every day the Tour de France is going on. Different people have like different rules and there are competitions and things like that. As a beginner spinner who had just bought their first e-spinner, I was like, I'm not going to join a team or anything. That seemed really intimidating, but I was just going to challenge myself to spin every day. And the difference in the yarns that I was making in that month's time is honestly incredible. Like, if you commit yourself to practicing every day for even just 5 minutes a day for a month, I promise that your yarn is going to be absolutely outstanding. So obviously after Tour de Fleece, I finally decided, I was like, okay, I really like this. I think I'm gonna be a spinner for the rest of my life. Frankly, I knew the second I got fiber in my hands for the first time and it started to twist into string, I don't care how bad I am at this. I don't care if I make horrible, terrible yarn like this for the rest of my life. I am going to spin yarn, damn it. Funnily enough, I look back at these yarns that I made and I'm not as overly critical as I was when I first was a beginner spinner. Essentially, from that point on, I did save all of my pennies. I was initially saving up for a brand new shacked matchless because I had tried them at number of fiber festivals. I just liked the way it spun. I dug it. I very much thought it was the wheel for me. And then I found out, I had no idea because something about me, I'm not very tech savvy. And so I didn't have a Facebook account until I used it to buy a spinning wheel. So I found out that you could find used spinning wheels on Facebook Marketplace. And I found a shacked dealer in the state of New Jersey who was selling one of her older shacked mattresses off. The price was right. I won't say exactly how much I spent on it, but it was sold to me for a song. Like, it really was. It didn't come with any bobbins. It was set up in double drive when I brought it home, which was endlessly frustrating until I figured out that it wasn't set up for scotch tension yet, and I needed to reset the whole thing. But once I got it set up, it's my heart wheel. I mean, it was awesome. Very, very, very shortly after, I'd say about 2 days later, I brought home this Lendrum. Now, the reason that I ended up with 2 wheels is because I was saving up for one brand new wheel, right? And I did a little bit of girl math on this. Gonna put it out there. So I was saving up for a wheel, and even though I didn't have enough for one brand new wheel, I did have enough money for 2 used wheels. And the Lendrum wheel, not only did it come with the wheel, but I knew that I was going to get this Lazy Kate that comes with it, and it came with a bunch of bobbins, and it came with an entire fiber destash, like a nice fiber collect, not like nice, like high quality, but a nice little buffer of fiber that like I don't care about and I often use to just mess around with. If you are a beginner spinner, that is a wonderful tip. Get some fiber that you're not like, you don't have your heart and soul invested in, so that you can do sample skeins and test spins on things so you can make sure you're going to end up getting the yarn that you want to get. I actually think I drove all the way to Pennsylvania for the Lendrum. Kind of like where the Catskills area meets Pennsylvania, that's where I was. Getting 2 wheels was honestly the best decision of my life. I use my 2 wheels for very, very different things. In the next episode, what I'm going to do is really thoroughly introduce the wheels and go over all of the parts. I'm also going to be making a mini series on TikTok where I go over all the parts of the wheel as well. If you don't already follow me on TikTok, they're under the same username, Wool to Gold. I just make videos about spinning and about fiber arts. I answer a lot of questions. I convert a whole lot of new spinners. One of the great things about Corriedale wool is it just spins up so fast. I spun this 2 ounces, I'd say, in like an hour's time. It's great. Love Corriedale. I did not have the patience. I don't have the patience anymore for these Halloween spins. I'm not going to lie. I miss working with just my undyed, natural colored fleece. Not that I don't love color. I do. I love color. I don't know. I miss my wild spins. I miss my fleeces. I think what it is too, I'm much more drawn to the bright colors when it is spring and summer, but we're approaching, we're in fall, we're approaching winter here in New Jersey, and it's getting chilly, and I'm just, I'm tending more towards my neutrals again. I think that is just how I'm feeling this season. I think it's worth mentioning, too, that upon receiving all 3 of my wheels that I technically have, right? The Electric Eel Wheel 6 by Dreaming Robots, Lendrum, and my Shack Matchless, there was a tiny mental breakdown that came with each of these wheels. So wheels are, as you may have gathered at this point, not inexpensive. And as a result, there is going to be, it is natural, I think, as a human to feel a little bit of doubt when you invest that much money in, especially oneself, in this economy, in this modern day and age. So I want all the new spinners out there who maybe just brought home their first wheel and are really struggling to get it to work to know that I was not always best friends with my wheels. And in fact, the first few hours I spent with each of my wheels was not necessarily the most pleasant. But the cool thing about spinning is if you are willing to push through, you will get better at this. I think it's worth remembering that, like, children used to spin, and it's not to diminish the art or the craft that goes behind spinning. There's a lot of unseen work and technical details that go into spinning, and you can again spend the rest of your life understanding and figuring out how to manipulate all of those variables. However, it is how all thread and fabric was made for, you know, thousands of years. So I think it's important to just keep that in mind and push through the difficult part, which is being bad at it. It is okay to be bad at things for a little while. You're a beginner. You just started. And again, I made the most progress in my spinning when I decided that even if I stayed bad at it for the rest of my life, I was going to keep doing it. You know, it was a worthwhile thing for me to do because it's also just really enjoyable. Once you do become friends with your wheel, it just is really fun to even just let, like, this is just one shade of blue for the entire fiber, right? But it is just really wonderful to let the color and the fiber run between your hands, get to feel that twist and manipulate that twist. I don't know, there's just something about it. I'm gonna take a pause here to show you guys because I promised I would, and I think it's important for you to see this. Oh no! So for context, I knocked our little spinning buddy off of his pedestal here. He hangs out, whispers secrets in my ear. Let me pull this bag. I have a curtain of drying yarn here. Oh dear. I got this bag from Fiberspace in Alexandria, Virginia. Fiberspace. Let's take a look here, shall we? First, let's do the very first skein of yarn I ever spun. This was from some Jacob Roving. I didn't know what pre-drafting was yet. It's mostly overspun. It's mostly overspun. As I'm sure you can kind of see here. Whenever I think about this yarn, it's always worse in my mind than it actually is. At the end of the day, I think this would produce a usable fabric. Like, it's not falling apart. Funny thing about this Jacob is I was so afraid to turn it into anything else that I kept it as just singles. I should have turned it into at least a 2-ply. Okay, next up on the docket, we have this CVM that I remember when I spun this, I thought that this was absolutely trash. And again, now looking at it, these are not like the worst singles. Like, these are pretty consistent, especially for, I think this was my second skein of yarn. And I did white CVM Rommeldale too, which is a pretty short staple, especially for a beginner. I love downy type fibers, but I don't necessarily recommend them for a beginner. And then here we have this underspun mess that again still somehow is holding together. This is some of the first fleece I processed. This is from Nicholas, the Suffolk fleece. I think I paid $16 for that fleece, and I have learned so much and gotten so much decent yarn out of this fleece. This is not a great example. Again, you can tell it's really underspun. I didn't really process it properly. It is honestly falling apart at the seams. It's not bad yarn. Like, it's soft and it is progress, right? I'm learning that I'm kind of overspinning the other one. So we have this little underspun hank. Skein was a lesson in that long wools need less twists to hold them together. This skein, I still really like the colors on this. This is a really hardy spin. It's a little, more than a little overspun. This is some dyed Lincoln long wool that I got from a place in New York City. I got the fiber, it was really compacted, and honestly, I'm very proud of beginner me for uncompacting that fiber and making it even like vaguely spinnable. I remember really enjoying spinning this too. I just overspun it a little bit. Is just really what it comes down to. And we have one of my favorite skeins, beginner skeins, to show people because I think it truly is just so pathetic is a mean word that I don't like to use for my own art. However, this is my first ever skein of art yarn. Um my first ever skein of, I'm sorry, textured yarn, and it is, I mean, if you don't have anything nice to say, don't say it. That's what I'll say about that. For context, now I can spin a pretty sick textured yarn. Like now, this skein, it's not dry yet, but I spin textured skeins like this bubble crepe yarn here. And at the end of the day, there is less than a year's time in between those skeins. Thanks so much, guys, for coming along on this first episode with me. I'm sure there's going to be edits that I make to the format and to just generally how I run things here or the subjects that I cover. I think next week I'm going to do a video where I talk to you about some recent fiber acquisitions and maybe my plans for those fiber acquisitions. Or I'll be doing a Rhinebeck video. Maybe I'll do both. I think that would probably be the responsible thing to do before I go to Rhinebeck, but like, do I want to be responsible before I go to Rhinebeck? That's the real question. Rhinebeck only happens once a year. It really is the spinners, knitters, crocheters, fiber artists in general, our Christmas. And I'm just so excited to be able to go. If you are going to Rhinebeck, drop a comment below. Maybe we'll see each other. If you do see me, say hello, and I will give you a little skein of my hand spun. I'm going to be bringing mini skeins that I have been saving so that if people come up to me and say hello, then they get a little gift. So hopefully we will see each other. Again, thank you so much for coming along for my first video, and hit that like and subscribe button, and I will see you on the next Wool to Gold podcast.